All right, we are live. Happy Wednesday. We are halfway through the week. And as you know, I have a 4 p.m. live Real Wellness podcast here on Facebook. You can find it on LinkedIn and YouTube. And today I am so excited to have my new friend, Mike Dyson, and I'll share a little bit more about him. But what this Real Wellness podcast is about, it's a space for real conversations with inspiring people who are living authentically with purpose, resilience, and intention, even through life's challenges. And to me, that's real wellness. It's not about perfection, it's about building a strong foundation for your health, your energy, and your life. So, Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about Mike, and I'm going to read off my notes because I want to make sure I give him all the honor. Mike is a Christian author, entrepreneur, and fitness business owner. So we have a lot in common. Who is passionate about encouraging people to find hope, purpose in life's most challenging seasons. For more than 30 years, his faith has guided him through his journey. Through writing, speaking, and authentic conversations, Mike helps others recognize God's presence in the valleys of life and discover that even through difficult seasons can become a place of growth, gratitude, and deeper faith. And I am so excited to dig into this conversation with you today, Mike. So, all right, what do you have to tell us? Share something fun with
Uh,
us
Oh, goodness, share something fun.
before we go down a
Oh,
little bit.
yeah. It's just this was a kind of a really surreal thing, to be honest with you. I mean, I had notes for my book for 7 years. And never wrote it on my calendar. It said write book every Thursday, and I bypassed it. And in the fall of last year, I was woke up in the middle of the night. I felt like I revisit my notes. I felt encouraged, and I wrote the book in 3 months. So it's kind of a surreal thing. I mean, you can think about things, but now that it's happened. But I think that this all came out of a different heart. And I went through a heart issue, but I do think it just came through me differently than it would have prior. So, I think God's timing, it was always on time, right? I thought I was lazy for the longest time. Like, why don't you write? Because I have written other things, but I think it was now it was the right time. So I'm just really encouraged by some of the feedback I was sharing with you a few minutes ago. It's just awesome. So I hope this touches people's lives. I hope today that someone comes away with some hope, more hope than what they have. I hope they're encouraged to move forward in the things that God has for them in their life in so many different ways. So,
Yeah, I think what drew me to Mike was I am a Ziglar coach, and when he said hope and encouragement, I'm like, that's what Zig Ziglar talks about and his whole family legacy. And so when Mike said that, I was like, I have got to meet this gentleman. Plus, he owns a gym, which many of you know I'm a prior gym owner. He owns 3 gyms. Mike, first tell us the title of your book so people know what book it is.
uh, it's called The Shadow, and it's about Psalm 23 and Psalm 91. Both represent a shadow, but two different sources. So that's kind of the gist of the book.
Okay,
One,
we'll
the
dig in.
shadow of the Almighty, and the other, the shadow of death, obviously. So,
Okay, we're going to dig into that a little bit more because I did read the introduction to that and you had me hooked right away. I'm part of
uh,
a Christian couples group, and I'm hoping that this book becomes one of our reading.
oh,
So,
wow, that's
yeah,
awesome.
so I'm really, really
Uh,
excited for you, Mike. Okay, so I have some questions for Mike, and I'm just going to kind of read them off. Y'all know my real wellness framework, and so I talk a lot about overall health and longevity and the things that help contribute to that. And it's not just physical health. And so I think a lot of it, when we go through life and we go through shadows or different valleys, that ultimately leads to purpose and hopefully to realizing that we need to take better care of ourselves. And I know you've had a journey with your health, Mike. So
I did.
was there a moment in your life when everything felt flipped upside down, and how did that experience reshape your foundation?
Yeah. For December of 23, I was in December 28th, I had double bypass surgery. So 3 months prior to that, I had a few symptoms. I didn't think I had a heart issue. I passed every test with flying colors. I was non-symptomatic. So when they finally found I had severe stenosis, which they did an angiogram, they found I had 80% blockage in my widowmaker and 99% blockage in a large branch. Now, God called me to change my health in 2004. It's how I ended up in the fitness industry. There's a whole story behind that. I don't have to go in time to go into it, but that set me on this journey. I work out. I work out at least 5 days a week. At that time, it was 6 days a week. So I'm very active in the gym and in nutrition, both, right? So that word continued forward, but it was a blind side. So I don't know that it changed my foundation. I think what it did was challenge my foundation, right? So I've been all these years with my relationship with God. So when they found that out and they went and they were going to try to put stents in me, they could not do it because I would have coded on the table. They were too close. And after that, they came out and they came into the room. I still remember it. Uh, and they said open heart surgery. So it was just a total shock. I cried a lot. It's still emotional to me, and it's been what, almost 3 years. I think, you create this foundation. God called me to change my health. I did what I would say all the right things. I know my daughter even spoke about that. She seemed almost a little frustrated. She knew my life and knew what we did. How could this happen? But I think I know God saved my life. And I think because I was doing all those things, it made me eligible for a special procedure. So I didn't have to get cracked open in the middle like normal. It went through the side. And I would not have been eligible if I would have been not doing what I was doing. So there's just a lot of pieces to the puzzle. So it challenged my foundation. I don't know. I was definitely turned upside down, that's for sure, because it was just a blindside. But I never shook my fist at God. I wasn't thinking, why'd you do this? It wasn't anything like that. I was totally, totally grateful, but also grieved. I was very grieved at the same time.
Yeah, there's so much I want to dig into right there because everyone who knows me knows how passionate I am about being proactive with your health. And here you are, Mike, the epitome of health, and thinking probably, how could this happen to my heart? And I
Mhm.
know other
Yeah.
people like that. When we feel like we're doing all the right things and yet something
Mhm.
happens, we're diagnosed with cancer or
Yeah.
we have something wrong. Mike, for those watching that might not know, what were those symptoms that you might have ignored or not thought that they could have been something?
Well, I woke up in September, first week on a Thursday or a Friday. I was going to play tennis. It was early in the morning, and I felt like I was drunk. I was like kind of my equilibrium, let's say, right? Very strange, but I went and played tennis anyway. I know people think that's kind of strange, but sometimes when you exercise, you feel better. Like if you're
Yeah.
not feeling good, right? So I went and I played fine. I felt still a little off, but then everything was gone. Then the following week, I had a similar thing, almost to the day. I went in, I failed two AKGs. Again, they admitted me this time. They found troponin in my blood, which is a heart enzyme that's created whenever you have an issue. But then they did all these tests. They patted me and said, "Hey, you're good to go. It's probably your exercise." Exercise for me, believe it or not, was somewhat of a hindrance for doctors to listen to me because they knew I exercised at high levels. Like when I play tennis, I play with guys 20 years to my junior. And it's intense tennis, right? If I work out in the gym, I monitor my heart rate, do a lot of hit, all those things. But so it was kind of, they kept blaming my exercise. Third week, same thing happened, except for this time I was meeting with someone and it was like when they were talking to me, I could not, I'm pretty good with data, but I couldn't handle the data in my mind. I had to tell her to stop. It was almost like my brain could not process it. It was very strange. So I went again and I had some notes this time along the way, just little things, and just monitoring blood pressure, things like that, which those were all fine.
Yep.
They admitted me again, found troponin again. Another day later, they did all sorts of testing, nuclear stress, and I passed all of them with flying colors. They still didn't think I had a heart issue. Again, my exercise was my wife kept saying, "You need to stop telling them about your exercise,"
Yeah.
because it
It's a
seemed as though
bragging
that
right.
became a hindrance. So, and for me, it was. I'm very proud. At 62 years old, or now 65, I feel like I'm in great shape. And no, physically, I'm no different, but prior to my surgery. So, like a lot of times when people come through this, they're so much different, but I'm not. Emotionally, I'm different. That's the impact that it had. Physically, no. So, yeah. So those symptoms, it was just I didn't get any numbness or anything like that. I have more heart pains now than I ever had in my life after surgery. And that's the thing about trusting. I've always trusted my body, and now I have these pains, and I have to I almost have to dismiss them. So I fight shadows all the time. When those things come, they become a reminder, almost a trigger of what happened. And I've had to learn, and I'm still learning how to rest and know that God still has me. And this is just a part of this process. So,
So important that you have to learn to listen to your body and to know when to rest. And I've learned that being in the industry for so long is we can get burnout and overwhelmed. Interesting about the troponin level, just an aside. My daughter a few years ago wound up in the ER with high levels, and she had just run, and I mean really high levels, like I want to say in the 300s,
Oh,
and went
wow.
through all the
Yeah.
testing, Mike, and they were like, "You're fine. We can't figure it out." Fast
Oh,
forward last year, wound back up in the cardiologist's office, got her levels tested. They called her and said, "You need to get back to the ER." Well, now she's become an actual case study because she has some sort of, and I can't even explain it, but something that actually gives false positive elevated troponin levels. So now she's become a case study for doctors, which is kind of just
wow.
interesting. But who
Yeah.
knows? But and they contribute it, like you, if you run marathons, you can have elevated levels, but
Right.
that's not something that's typically tested.
Right, and they tested mine after just recently, matter of fact, and I have some elevated troponin normally. I don't even know where that comes from. I don't know if that's my exercise or what, but it's a very strange thing. And it's very hard for me now to trust the cardiologist. I've been through 4 of them because
Yes.
they don't seem to listen to me, and I think that becomes a real problem. I'm not the standard person, and I'm not speaking bad about anyone else, but I don't have type 2 diabetes. I don't have hypertension and all those other things. I just don't have them, and I get treated, I get dismissed. That's what happens many times. It's a very frustrating thing. And if I was in those other categories, I don't think I'd be a dismissed. So it's crazy how you're healthy, but then you have to like almost fight in some
Yeah.
ways for someone to pay attention. It's kind of crazy.
Well, that's the medical system. It's a sick
It
care
is.
system.
Yeah.
So the healthier you
Yeah.
are, we are dismissed. So that's a really
Yeah.
good point. But thank you for sharing that, Mike. I can tell how emotional you got when you're talking about that. My dad had an open heart surgery, a quadruple bypass, and he was a physician, and his name was Mike, and he didn't take care of himself. So
Yeah.
he went through a lot. But yeah, it's hard to go through that. Okay, let's talk a
Yes.
little bit about energy because I am like the more
Okay.
like something that we all need, something that so many people lack. But during
Okay.
that season, and maybe this is even now, this however you want to relate this, what is draining to you, like what pulls the energy out of you, and then what adds value, like what gives you that energy. And I have an idea, but I'm curious to see.
Yeah. This time has caught me at an emotional time. Yesterday, I seemed to hit a little bit of a wall. It's very interesting. I don't understand it exactly. But I think what drains me is the emotional side of things. I do really well. I've had a couple spells since my heart surgery where I had to be admitted. And they just tell me just next time breathe through it or something. It's kind of crazy, but it kind of sets back this, it takes you back. It's almost like you're starting over, right?
Yeah.
Like you're battling through, you're getting ahead of things, and then boom, you have a setback. So I think for me, it's the emotional side. It's taken a very big toll on me. I think it is not harmed my marriage, but I think it's made it harder. It just has. Becky is she's scared, of course. I mean, there's just a lot of dynamics that happen. So I think that that's probably the biggest thing that I have to fight against. My book called The Shadow, which is the shadow of death, the shadows that try to encapsulate us and speak to us. And, because I got blindsided, now other thoughts want to come of what else could I be blindsided by, right? A car accident, there's thoughts that come in my head, and that's the battle, right? It's in our mind. And I
Mhm.
talk about that in the book. So where my energy comes from, it comes from my relationship with the Lord, right? So I spend a quiet time in the morning. I read. I talk to Him all the time. Paul says, "Pray without ceasing." Some people would say, "How's that even possible?" Well, because I talk to Him constantly. My thoughts are always before Him. In my business, my P&L, all those things, they're always before Him. When I'm in the gym, I listen to Christian music. It's a lot of my meditation time in a lot of ways. So that's where I gain my energy from. Some people would say I'm extroverted. I'm really not because I don't gain energy from other people. Maybe back in my past, prior to my relationship with God, I may have, but I would probably say more ambient. It's that middle ground, right? But I don't mind sitting back and having quiet time. We're here all day. We don't have TV on. If anything, we might have worship music on, but that's where the energy comes from, is really through the spirit, I would say, is where my energy comes from. So,
Yeah, that is so good. And the older I get, the more I'm leaning into that personally. When you say music, I'm actually going to see Lauren Daigle tonight, who's a Christian
oh,
artist. So
nice.
I'm
Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
excited to see her. So
Yeah.
music is my soul so
Yeah.
much. There's something you touched on that I wanted to go back to. Oh, what I love about you, Mike, is your vulnerability. And I think more men need to show that emotional side. I think so often it's, you feel like you're not allowed to show your emotions or how you feel. And I think when we first connected, I really appreciated that. And I was very drawn to that. So I thank you for that. And I think
I'm
there's any
sure.
gentleman watching that it's okay to go
Yeah.
through all these emotions and to deal, like, you're acknowledging that there's triggers that bring you right back, and it's scary. I get it.
Yeah. Something about that too. I think my rededication to the Lord in 1993 set me on this journey when he said I had to stop blaming for things in my life. It's too much of a story to go into, but it kind of set me on the path of taking on personal responsibility for things. But not only that, but to no longer stuff. Right, because I did that for many years from all the traumas that I faced. So I think trying to be aware of that, but kind of a frustrating thing coming through this. In a lot of heart groups, is that men don't. Like most of them say, I wasn't affected at all. And I just don't know how that's possible, right? So females are pretty good about opening about how they feel, but I very seldom ever meet males that will say that they had any emotional issue. Maybe that's true, but it wasn't true for me. Um, and I think that when all this first happened, physically, I was back on a tennis court in 8 weeks. But then within about 6 months after that, I started noticing I wasn't enjoying things like I was before, and depression started setting in. So even though I was pretty aware of in tune emotionally, it kind of snuck up on me, and I kind of was in it before I knew it. So it's kind of crazy how that happened. So, but I'm
Yeah.
glad God taught me to be like that because it's dangerous when you stuff your emotions away. So,
Yes. Yeah, and that kind of segments me into my next question. You mentioned depression, which so many people struggle with. It's at an all-time high. What's one thing that you do or one action you took when you found yourself in the valley in that deep darkness?
boy, I prayed a lot. Of course, I already talked about my relationship, but I think it was what was hard for me was I have done a lot of counseling with people that are in trauma themselves. So I kind of know the tools to help people to heal their heart, right? With the power, obviously, the Holy Spirit involved in that. I think the part that was hard for me was is that I felt like I was not right to feel that way. Like I felt that the darkness I felt was not godly, not righteous, all those things. And I was coming under a lot of fire in my mind that something's wrong with me. Now, I'm not saying that depression is from God. Please don't take what I'm saying because that's not what I'm
Mhm.
saying. But I felt grieved, and I think that that grief that was in me, I eventually had to learn how to resign to it, surrender to it, in order to operate in the victory in the midst of it. So instead of it seeing it as something was wrong with me, now this is just in my case. I'm not saying in all cases depression, many times depression is a flag for something that needs to be healed. But in my case, it was a trauma and I just had to process through it. So I had to kind of let go and stop thinking that something was wrong with me. Like I wasn't doing something right. Like I wasn't pressing into God hard enough. I mean, there's a gamut of different things that go along with it. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges was that to finally let go of that. And I'm still processing through that, to be honest with you. So,
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think it's a journey. There's no true destination until, hopefully we're in heaven someday.
right,
So I
right,
appreciate that a lot. And I think so many people struggle with it. And I think our path creates our purpose. So what we've walked through, the storms we've walked through, ultimately we can help other people through that
right,
once we're able to deal with it, right? And so I love
right.
that
I
that you,
agree.
you're
And I
really
want to share something
stewing.
real quick, if you don't mind. I write
Yeah,
about that in my
please.
book about Psalm 57. And part of the book and the shadow about this is just to show what God showed me. The Psalm 23 and Psalm 91, shadow of the Almighty and shadow of death. And what God showed me in this is that what happens to people or happens to us is that the shadow of death, we're supposed to walk through that valley, but we become hopeless, right? These things happen, like what I've gone through. Maybe it's cancer, maybe it's a divorce, maybe it's even something that I might consider small, but for somebody else, it affects them in a deep way. And then they get discouraged, and the enemy obviously is there. We do have an enemy who's speaking all the things that are against the truth. And what happens is it paralyzes people in the valley. And that's what this my book is about, is to encourage people to rise up and to see what the truth is and that the whispers that they're hearing is really not the truth, and to stand up and then be able to be encouraged to walk through that valley. That's not an easy process. In the midst of where I was, I tried to stand up moment by moment. At many times, felt like I couldn't. And maybe I was crawling in the valley. I don't know what my posture was, but I knew that I wasn't going to stay there forever. At least that's what I believed. And it's true. And it's gotten much better. So I think the encouragement I hope that people hear is that wherever you're at, you don't have to stay there. And there's one that can guide you through it. But there is intentionality to that relationship in order to get you out and to guide you through. God's not a wish God, He's moved by faith, and believing that He actually will take you through. And I think that is a big thing. They say there's 12 inches between heaven and hell is what they say, between your head and your heart. And really that belief system has to move from your head truly to your heart, and trusting him even when you don't see the things happening. Like me walking in the darkness that I did, I was not seeing necessarily what I would constitute victory, but I had to know and believe that I wasn't going to stay there. So that's what I hope people get encouraged by, is to rise up, and to know that that's not their place, is in the valley. Their place is to walk through the valley, and that's quite different.
You said God is not a wish God, He's a God of faith. Oh, that's
Yeah.
so good. That's so quotable, Mike. Love it.
Yeah.
I could listen to you all day.
Yeah.
Okay, a few more questions. What are your current non-negotiables when you're protecting your health now? What are things that you know
Yeah.
you have to do, not maybe just physically, but in all the
Yeah.
other aspects?
I think God's really brought me up to be a very disciplined person. One of the fruits of the Spirit, the very last one mentioned, is temperance, which is self control. Very interesting. It's almost like, by the way, you will need this. So my non negotiables, I mean, I'm in the gym all the time, but I do think that as I've gotten older, I'm using a little more wisdom in when my body needs to rest. Whereas before, I probably would have just pushed through every day. So I am paying more attention to that. My days are pretty regimented, so they're pretty normal. Like, I mean, I pretty well diet's about the same. I don't use Lose It apps anymore just because I eat the same thing all the time. I pretty well know where my macros are at, so I don't. So I think remaining intentional in my relationship, I don't know that I'm doing extra things. I watch a lot of different videos that encourage me, and reading and things like that. So I think just staying on what I'm doing and not slipping back. And to be honest, my Bible reading is a part of that. But there were times, in those dark periods where I read my devotions, but it was just hard for me sometimes to read my Bible. Not that I didn't believe it, my life felt so flat. I mean, that's just all there is to it. So I think I'm coming out of that, and just trying to get back on track on back to basically the basic principles, that I think that God has guided me through every step of the way. So,
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Something else you touched on that I wanted to just go over a little bit, because it's something that me and my husband deal with, is when you go through something traumatic, whether it's together or personally, and you went through the hard issues, but your spouse had to watch that. I think so
yeah,
many marriages struggle with that and how to be the best support. And then you're worrying, like, we lost a child. So we always worried that something else. And I still to this day fight those demons. Like, my son got his wisdom
yeah,
teeth taken out 2 weeks ago. I was terrified that something would go wrong. So I have to constantly lean into my faith, talk myself
yeah,
down, and
mhm,
and sometimes it creates this friction that he doesn't even know that I'm internalizing all of this. And then he
right,
wonders, like, why are you so grumpy and sad? And I'm like, well, I know it's
yeah,
just wisdom teeth, but I also know
yeah,
things can happen. I've been there, and all of us
yeah,
can experience that. So what would you
yeah.
say is a good tip, Mike, for marriage? And my husband are actually working on a book together on marriage.
Oh, wow, good for you.
Yeah, what
Yeah,
would be a good tip, would you say,
mm,
when you're going through those hard times? How do you work
yeah.
through that friction?
I think you have to talk. I mean, I was communicating with my wife all along the way. I think that's about all you can do, is try to tell how you feel when sometimes you don't even know how you feel, but do your best to communicate that. I think that's being open. When I use the word intimacy, too many people have that word wrong. They think that that's physical, but intimacy is so much more than that. And I think when you come through these type of things, it has an effect, and it can have an effect on that intimacy, because a person is going through so much in their life, trauma and the depression, like I'm talking about, and it makes you really flat. You start second, you fighting against your identity, like you talked about with your son. I mean, I woke up the other night and in fear of losing my wife. I'm not going to say those thoughts have never crossed my mind in my marriage before, but since I've been through this because of a blind side, I think you fight more thoughts, and I'm still in this battle, right? I believe that I won't always be where I'm at now. I believe that God will continue to heal what needs to be healed in me. But these are the things that you face. And so I think you just have to be open and transparent as much as you can along the way. My wife has been very gracious because sometimes I leak. All right, that's just what it is. Sometimes I can be a little curt or not come off exactly the way I need to, and I don't understand all those things. Maybe it's a control issue. I don't know. Again, I have to resign to the process, but I think being open, being apologetic when you know you're wrong, that's a big thing for sure. There's no justification, in my opinion, for any wrong behavior. If you did the bad behavior, then you need to own up to it, and you need to repent from it and ask for forgiveness from it, no matter what the circumstances are. Heart surgery does not negate what I just said, and neither does anything else. So I think being transparent is the best thing you can do.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. What is one thing you want every listener to take away from today? What you've been through, maybe something you can share, maybe a little nugget.
You know, um, I'm gonna. I felt like I was on top of the world, and I still do. So I don't want someone to misconstrue what I'm saying here. But this was a blind side, big time in my life, and I'm still coming through that. So I think that God is sovereign, and I don't know that I can completely explain that or even completely understand that. But I do know that He's a good God, and He is a healer because that is who He is. Now, whether I walk in that moment or not, whether I'm in the fullness of that healing, does not negate who He is. And I think what happens in this is there's two things. It's one, when these circumstances happen, they either repel us from the very person that we need the most in our life because we somehow think that they're at fault in one way. And some people may say, I would never think that, but a piece of their heart does. They don't have a good knowledge of the character of God. On the other hand, the other side is that we lean into him more and we find out even deeper how much his truth of his character is. But he is a good God and he's with us every step of the way. There's an enemy out there. We have to understand that. People will talk about God, and I'm not one to sit around and talk about the enemy. I don't want to give him credit, but I think we have to have the realization that there's the fall of man and there is sin in this world, and there is decay that's going on. We're all decaying as we go. It's not a positive thing to say. I get it, but the bottom line is that people need to understand that he's with them. Right? If they don't know him, that's a big one, right? But if you know him, you can still have these acts. David had issues. Elijah had issues. I mean, there are people in the Bible that are illustrations of what I'm talking about. And in my book, Psalm 57 talks about a posture where David was at and experiences both shadows while he's in the cave. So I think that one of the things the enemy does is he wants to isolate us and make us think that we are the only ones that feel this way. And if you were a godly person, how in the world could you feel that way? I fought this battle myself, even though I know it different. So I would just want to encourage people to understand who God is and that He's a good, good Father. That's what He is. And if you've had a bad one, I didn't have one. Mine left before I was born. I think it's hard to reconcile sometimes of who He really is. Um, and I think that can be a real challenge. So I just hopefully people will be encouraged by what I'm saying. Take it to the bank that He has great plans for you. It's not a cliche, but in those great plans comes a yielding to his ways, his thoughts to get to his plans. It's not by happenstance. There's intentionality to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Mike. Mike, where can people connect with you? Maybe if they have any questions with you, for you, they want to maybe your email, your social media, share the name of
Okay.
your book, and we'll put this all in the comments anyway.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, there's a Mike Dyson author is on Facebook. Info at MikeDysonAuthor.com. And then The Shadow is the name of the book, and that is on Amazon. So if you just type in The Shadow by Mike Dyson, it will pop up. It's available on Kindle and things like that as well. So again, email is info at MikeDysonAuthor.com. A little long, I get it. But I'd love to hear from people if they have something or they have questions. I'm pretty transparent. I'm an open book, no pun intended, because I have a book, but I think that this is how we help people, right? And I think, again, like I said, I think I wrote the book out of a different posture than I would have prior to my heart surgery. And I think I have a greater compassion and greater empathy for people with mental health and different things. And I think mental health has become a little loosely used in some regards, but it doesn't mean that it's not really there. And the church, in my opinion, doesn't talk about it. And I'm not saying they should run around constantly talking about it, but I think people could feel isolated and not understand what to do when they're feeling these things. So if I can help in any way, please, whoever's listening, don't hesitate. I definitely am one to respond. So,
Yeah, you can all see why I connected with Mike. He is a gem. Again, when we had our first conversation, I just knew that we had so much in common. I love his heart. And I just appreciate your vulnerability, your transparency, sharing your story, sharing your purpose. I know that you're going to help so many people through their valleys and really lead to their purpose as well. So I appreciate our conversation, Mike. And again, if anyone has questions, please connect. Please share this if this resonated with you. If you're watching it as a replay, would love to hear from you. Until next time, you are watching the Real Wellness Podcast every Wednesday at 4, although one will be a little different. I'm going to have a special guest in a few weeks, but that will be in the evening. Someone a little famous. But anyway, I hope you all have a great day. And again, connect with Mike. He just drops so many nuggets that we can all benefit us. So until next time, keeping it real, take care of your body, your mind, and your soul, and have a great day.
thanks, Jess.